Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Very Cold Lasagna podcast, your place for all those filthy casual takes on the world of sports. I'm your host, DylanLasagna. This is episode number 197 of this icy yet spicy sports podcast. And in this episode, we're here to once again go into the coldest depths of the freezer, grab that old icebox, and open it up for another retro review. And in this retro review, we're gonna go back into the past to the year of 2004 again to talk about a little bit of Backlash. I'm not talking about the one that you receive when you get a lot of hate or a lot of criticism or a lot of, all the bad stuff. No, not that kind of backlash. I'm talking about the backlash that you see when you watch the WWE. The event known as Backlash. Yes, the 2004 edition of WWE Backlash. So we're going to take a look at this event that took place in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, in the year of 2004, 20 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, in this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. Before we do, though, it's been a little while since the last episode, since the last time we were on here on Very Cold Lasagna, so a little bit to catch up on before we get things started, and, of course, our obvious housekeeping, but I do want to say, since the last episode, it's been a little bit relaxing. It's been nice to, get away from things. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way, because I'll be honest with you all. I felt burnt out for the first time since doing this show. And you can say, sure, it's been, I don't say that very openly, a lot to people, but yeah, I guess for the first time since doing the show in the last, several months, and especially like this last month, I felt burnt down, and some of that may come from, may have been done by myself, but yeah, I was just feeling burnt out. I was like, not just physically stifled, but mentally stifled because of how much pressure I was putting myself to. Gotta get this out. Gotta get this out. But at the end of the day, we made it through, and hopefully going forward, I can better plan out my stuff because, I'll be honest with you, I'm terrible at planning stuff out, and planning out content. But yeah, hopefully we could try to be better. I could try to be better at that. And at least right now, it's a little bit more relaxing period. That doesn't mean I'm gonna not do content for you all, until the more busy period once again comes up, which is like July with NFL season review month. But in regards to this, yeah, it is honestly nice to relax a little bit, because it's been stressful. It's really been stressful. I just need to be honest with you all of how it's been so far, these last several months, weeks, days, yeah. So moving on from that, as I said before, I didn't watch WrestleMania last week, but I did know what happened with the main event, so I did post some videos about that on YouTube. So for all my audio listeners out there, go watch the Very Cold Lasagna YouTube channel. Subscribe, by the way. I did 2 videos on that. One of them was about Cody Rhodes, finally finishing his story, and then obviously you have the people already saying, "Oh, he's gonna fail. People are gonna turn on him." They've been saying that, and I'll just say this, people, let's wait it out. Let's see how it turns out in like a couple months, and then if it turns out to be true, okay, you got your validation. Have your victory parade. And again, I'm not the biggest Cody Rhodes fan. I'm on a neutral playing field. He doesn't have the greatest character, and if not lack of character at all. But it's just like, let's see how it goes. I'm willing to see how it goes. And then obviously I did a video on Liv Morgan's whole rebuild tour. I'm surprised people are still calling it a revenge tour, per se. Again, I'm a fan of her. I'm just hate how WWE's booking her is all. I really dislike how WWE's booking her. I hate how people are blaming Liv herself. It's just terrible. It's just absolutely terrible how it's going. And I'm not trying to be a simp. I was like, oh, you're a simp. But no, I just hate the booking of her. I just really dislike her booking. It's it. It's a crime. is a crime against humanity. So anyway, the NFL draft is coming up, and I'm still, I don't even know. I'm still trying to process like all these new draftees that are coming up. I got to catch up on all the prospects that are coming up, so we can do the annual Filthy Casuals guide to the 2024 NFL draft. So I'm hoping to catch up on all the prospects on that are interesting, of course. But yeah, gotta see all these prospects that are going to be interesting in this upcoming draft. See what all these teams need coming up. I imagine that it hasn't changed much since the last time I did my team recaps. So yeah, expect hopefully you can expect the Casuals guide coming soon to a Very Cold Lasagna near you. But other than that, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a chill period until at least June or July. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to be doing anything here on Very Cold Lasagna. So, yeah. And yeah, we're almost hitting up on 200 episodes. If you guys want to do like for all the people listening, whether it's on YouTube or on audio, if you want to commemorate 200 episodes, whether you guys want to do a Q&A or you guys want to send in an episode suggestion or whatnot, you can leave that in the comments below on YouTube or send me a message on social media on Instagram or Twitter at Very Cold Lasagna. I'd be more than open to do that. So speaking of which, make sure you follow the show on social media on X and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. And if you're listening to this on audio only, you can subscribe to Very Cold Lasagna and rate the show however you want to rate it, whether it's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And listen to the show, watch the show on YouTube, smash the subscribe button, smash the like button, leave a comment down below with your takes on the episode that you're watching, whether it's this one, the last one, whichever. With this episode in particular, we're talking about WWE Backlash 2004. Leave me your memories or leave me your favorite match from this show after we discuss it. And make sure you share this with your friends, share this with your neighbors, share this with a stranger, share this with your pets as well. And if your dog wants to watch it or your cat wants to watch it too. But anyway, make sure you spread the good, the bad, the ugly about Very Cold Lasagna. That being said, now let's get back into the Old Icebox as we look now at the 20th anniversary of this pay-per-view from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, WWE Backlash. Here we are back in 2004 as we now venture into the 2004 edition of WWE Backlash, the 6th annual edition of this event that centered around the fallout of WrestleMania took place on this date, April 18th, 2004. Now, during this time of 2004, if you didn't catch the retro reviews of WrestleMania 20, No Way Out, the Royal Rumble, this event in particular was held during the time of the original brand split. If you don't know what the brand split is, if you didn't catch my stuttering mouth, the original brand split split the two shows of the WWE, Monday Night Raw, SmackDown. It's not on Friday during this time. It was on Thursday, for some of you that caught that mistake. But anyway, these two shows were specifically divided into its own separate entities. So Raw was exclusive, SmackDown was exclusive. So they had their own pay-per-views going on during this time. So that was the case with WWE Backlash. So unlike the previous 2 years where it was cross-branded, this year in 2004, it was Raw's turn only. It was Raw's only show. So this was an event where, yeah, it centered around the backlash or the fallout of, you know, what happened with the Raw side of WrestleMania. So emulating from the now closed Rexall Place, now known as the Northlands Coliseum, and the former home of the Edmonton Oilers of the National Hockey League in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, this was the first Backlash pay-per-view to take place outside of the United States. And, well, up until 2023, it was the only one. Like I said, until the 2023 edition in San Juan, Puerto Rico, which was last year. So, yeah, we have this 2004 edition, which happened 20 years ago. We're commemorating its 20th anniversary. Was it going to be a good show compared to the last 3 pay-per-views in 2004 that we talked about? Well, let's talk about it. Let's run down this match card, shall we? So we started it off with the Sunday Night Heat pre-show that was on Spike TV, and you're trying to ask your mommy, your daddy, or your parents, your grandparents, whoever was babysitting you at that time. You're asking them to call the cable provider, asking them for their credit card to buy this pay-per-view, or maybe just didn't have enough money to get the show. But anyway, you had the Sunday Night pre-show on Spike TV, and it kicked off with Val Venus taking on Matt Hardy. Version 1. Not really a whole lot to say about this match because, well, it's a pre-show match. Trying to get the crowd ready up. And the crowd, it's an international crowd. So no surprise that they're all hyped and ready to go. So Val Venus won with the money shot belly flop onto Matt Hardy. And the Edmonton crowd was in support of Matt Hardy, despite Hardy during this point in period being a heel. So, yeah, not really much to say else about this match, this pre-show match. But yeah, you had less than 5 minutes to go before the main show, and you had to ask your cable provider to buy this pay-per-view, to purchase the pay-per-view. It's like, please, I need to order this pay-per-view now. Give it to me now. So what you did, get the pay-per-view from your cable provider. You got the main show, which kicked off with Shelton Benjamin taking on the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. This matchup was set up because, well, after a year of being in a tag team with Charlie Haas, known as the world's greatest tag team, Shelton Benjamin was drafted over to Raw without Charlie Haas as part of the 2004 draft lottery. And Benjamin started to get this big push from management. And in his first 2 weeks, he picked up 2 major victories over Triple H. First by a fruit roll-up, and the second one by count-out. And a week before the show, a match between Shelton Benjamin and Ric Flair, like student versus teacher kind of deal, was made for Backlash. So this opening matchup was decent. It was like a decent typical affair of trade momentum. In other words, Benjamin got the early momentum, and then Ric Flair would, use half of the match to take down Benjamin, being the heel that he is, and then Benjamin would get the win. But this was a nice showcase for Shelton Benjamin, who during this time was, again, receiving a major singles push. I'm not sure if WWE was really trying to make him a main event kind of player, because, he was uber athletic. It's just, when you look at it from my perspective, not really sure if he was really world championship material. But he had the athletic skills, though. Just, I don't know, main event, world champion, and not really during that time. But Ric Flair, like I said, he spent half of the match targeting Benjamin's knee. He even had the figure 4 leg lock in at one point, but then Benjamin escaped out of it. And then the end of the match saw Flair trying to use brass knuckles, but then Benjamin used a stinger splash on Ric Flair to knock it out of him in the corner. And then Benjamin went up the top rope and then hit a flying clothesline for the win. So, decent match to start off the show. And Benjamin was going to continue his big push going forward. But from there, after that, slowly but surely, I'd say it steadily didn't go as well. But he still went on to have a kind of okay career. Then we had Tajiri take on Jonathan Coachman. You started to see the show kind of a little It started to go a little right then and there, because you had matches like this on the card. So newest draftee Tajiri decided to make his presence felt on Raw because, he was part of the draft lottery as well. So Tajiri sprayed some poison mist onto Jonathan Coachman as like a prank in the locker room. So Jonathan Coachman gets embarrassed by Tajiri and then decides to get payback on him a week later on Raw when Tajiri had a match against Christian, but then he lost that match because Jonathan Coachman pulled the leg of the referee. And then Christian, he hit the kill switch on Tajiri, and that was pretty much how this match gets set up at Backlash. So, this matchup was honestly longer than expected. I thought Tajiri was going to squash Jonathan Coachman because Jonathan Coachman was kind of like that comedy heel. He would get like pranked, embarrassed. He was just one of those comedy heels that would just really get his butt whooped all the time. But no, he actually got in a lot of offense on Tajiri, despite Tajiri being the heavy favorite. So the coach dodged a buzzsaw kick, which Tajiri was trying to like literally behead to Coachman, but he missed and he hit the ring post instead. So the coach was literally just like with the last matchup, he was literally targeting the leg. But Tajiri did manage to fight back. But after being forced to let go of that tarantula submission, that's like him, applying like a spider-like submission on the ring ropes, you had to break the 5 count before the 5 count, or he's going to get disqualified. But while the referee was tending over to Jonathan Coachman, some random guy named Garrison Cade came over and punched Tajiri's lights out, and then Jonathan Coachman used a deadly fruit roll-up to score an upset victory over Tajiri. And yeah, this is the second straight one of the night, by the way. So far, you had 2 upset victories, Shelton Benjamin and Jonathan Coachman. And yeah, the Jonathan Coachman one was not really all that surprising, considering that Tajiri by that point was like pretty much lower card material. I have a jobber by that point, and so was Jonathan Coachman. So yeah, not really much else to say. The third match of the night, and kind of the one more important, was Chris Jericho taking on Christian and Trish Stratus in a handicap match. So this love triangle that I talked about back in my WrestleMania 20 retro review, this started back in December, and Chris Jericho had his just friend Trish Stratus inadvertently cost him his match against Christian at WrestleMania the month prior. But then when she tried to apologize to Chris Jericho, she actually betrayed him afterwards, and she and Christian went on to dismantle Chris Jericho, and then forced him to watch Christian up on the stage passionately kiss Trish Stratus. And Jericho was just like, what the fuck, man? What the hell? So Trish Stratus revealed that Jericho didn't appreciate her as the reason why she betrayed her. She betrayed him. But Jericho, he was like, nah, you just a you know what. I can't say the word because, the police. But anyway, he just brushed it off with his usual barrage of insults during the Jericho time of 2004. So after weeks of going at each other's throats, it was announced that Jericho was going to face Christian and Trish Stratus in a handicap match at Backlash. So this match was pretty fun despite its slow start, and everyone got involved. And I say everyone because Trish Stratus, she did some good stuff here. She did some pretty good stuff here, playing her role as the very tactical, manipulative heel, and even attacking Chris Jericho too during this match. Very smartly too, tagging in, getting her stuff in, hitting the chick kick on Jericho before having to tag out to avoid Jericho, which was pretty nice. And of course, being the heel that her and Christian were, they paid the price for it in the end. There was a funny spot though during the match where Christian reversed the walls of Jericho, and then Christian pushed him into used his legs to push Jericho into the corner, and then Christian didn't realize that Jericho was gonna fall on him, and then Jericho landed head first into Christian's nuts. And then I think the ref was like, "Oh, okay, the match is gonna continue," and then and Christian's like, "Fuck my nuts." He's like, "I get my future kids." So anyway, you get past the midway point of this match. Jericho caught Trish trying to slap her again. So he grabbed her hands, and then he countered it by spanking her in the butt. Yeah, he gave her that good old spanking that she deserved back at WrestleMania. But Christian used the opportunity to hit the kill switch. Trish and Christian tried to pin him, but to no avail. So the turning point of this match saw Jericho clothesline Trish Stratus, which KO'd her until the closing moments of this match. And then Y2J and Christian double clotheslined each other, which led the referee to, trying to do that double count on them. Trish later recovered, like I said, only to get trapped into the walls of Jericho before Christian used the deadly front roll up for a near fall on Jericho. And then Christian attempted another kill switch, but Jericho countered and catapulted him into Trish Stratus into the corner before hitting the running enziguri for the 1, 2, 3, overcoming the deadly duo of Christian and Trish Stratus. Fun handicap match. Really fun handicap match to back up this Heated storyline that started over a Canadian dollar. Yes, I kid you not. From my last retro review, this started over a Canadian dollar coin. And yeah, Chris Jericho and Trish took it to another level with, Jericho, feeling bad for Trish. And then Trish, and Jericho being all serious with their relationship, like storyline wise, of course. And then this betrayal at WrestleMania. This was a good cap. Well, it didn't really end yet, but it was a good touch to chapter to that rivalry. So this had testified at WrestleMania, and it was a good another addition to that chapter at Backlash. So, like I said in my retro review of WrestleMania 20, Jericho and Christian ran it back a few weeks later on Raw inside of a steel cage. Jericho won that match, but Christian was injured in that match, so that put the feud on hold, and it supposedly ended that feud. But Christian returned months later to revisit that rivalry. I'm like, you lost a good amount, like 2 of the 3 of those matches, and yet you want to like run it back again. Like, okay, that's kind of weird. That's a choice by Christian and WWE booking, but okay, you're lost. So anyway, our next matchup had the WWE Women's Champion Victoria take on Lita. Not much of a setup here. It was just basically, challenger was set up by via Battle Royale. Lita won that Battle Royale 2 weeks prior on Raw to earn this matchup versus the Women's Champion at Backlash. They did note that these were the 2 most popular women's wrestlers on Raw during this time period. So, yeah, why not have 2 of these popular wrestlers fight for the title at Backlash? So, yeah, well, why not? Why not? This was a decent match where both women didn't really have the advantage throughout the match. It was okay from an in-ring standpoint. Per usual during this time period, Jerry Lawler was talking about things, and Jim Ross was just like, Jerry, focus on the match. You gotta focus on the match, man. And then towards the end, Victoria attempted using Lita's moonsault against her, but Lita moved out of the way at the very last second. Lita hit a reverse twist of fate for a near fall. Lita tried for a regular one, but Victoria countered it with an inside cradle for the 1, 2, 3 to retain the title. So, again, decent match. It's just, this is just how it was during this point in period. And, some of us have our preferences in terms of, women's wrestling. But I'm just pointing out the facts that, Jerry Lawler didn't give a shit. The fans were like whistling, howling. The Edmonton crowd was just like, all sorts of punch with these 2 women like, woo! They're just doing something else during this match. But I'm just pointing out I was just pointing out the obvious. I'm not, trying to get all riled up. But anyway, Victoria retained their title, and then after the match, both were attacked by Molly Holly and Gail Kim for whatever reason. And then they attacked them both for no reason. Maybe a reason that I'm not aware of. And then earlier in the night, those 2 were actually seen in the locker room in a interesting proposition by a new at the time Eugene. Who is Eugene? Well, Eugene is this was this person who had a controversial gimmick of portraying a person with a disability. And I say controversial because a lot of people were giving, like, I don't know, there's a lot of flack with this character, with, it's like a bad play with like people with disabilities and whatnot. I don't know. The more I watched Eugene on this show, the more I was just like, okay, this is not good. And yeah, this is like, I'm not trying to be sensitive. I'm not trying to touch on it too much because it's like a very sensitive topic. But it's just like, when you look at Eugene, the character, it's just like, it's kind of done in poor taste. And I know it sounds, some of you call me sensitive, whatnot, but it's just my opinion. It really is just my opinion on that. And even if it's a simple ass opinion, it's just not right. It kind of is a really odd gimmick to give if you look at it from the lens of Vince. Like, really? This is really what Vince wanted to go with? Kind of strange, if you ask me. Then we had one of our main matches of the night, and boy, this is going to be a doozy. The Intercontinental Champion Randy Orton defending his title against Cactus Jack Mick Foley in a hardcore match. I talked about it in previous retro reviews that this feud was pretty much a mainstay for the better part of 2004 and kind of like later, like a good part of 2003. It was touched upon, like, but this feud had been a good part of the early half of 2004 because Mick Foley and Randy Orton, they've been at each other's throats for a good part of 6 months. This feud started back in June of 2003. It escalated at the Royal Rumble in 2004, where Foley returned and eliminated both Orton and himself from the Royal Rumble match. And then Orton decided to get some payback on Mick Foley, attacking him along with Evolution. And then The Rock returned to align back with Mick Foley to team up with him at WrestleMania 20 against 3/4 of Evolution, Orton, Batista, and Ric Flair. But Orton and Evolution won that match. So that brings us to Backlash. 2 weeks later, Mick Foley challenged Randy Orton for his Intercontinental Championship at Backlash. And Orton was just like, oh man, you know what? Yeah, I accept. Although he was very hesitant about it. And Mick Foley was like, yeah, all right, let's do it. But you can't have Evolution in your corner because it's going to be a hardcore match. So, yeah, this is going to be a really interesting matchup because you had the hardcore legend, Mick Foley, pretty much in his domain, while he had a rising star in Randy Orton, going to be facing his biggest test yet. And whether or not he was going to be that guy to be saddled with such proposition by the WWE. So this match, it got off to a pretty frantic start. Mick Foley was already making his way down the ring with that barbed wire baseball bat he calls Barbie. And I'm not talking about the doll. So Foley went towards Randy Orton, started chasing him. He started off by hitting Randy Orton with the who was shielding himself with a trash can. He hit the trash can with Barbie, and then Randy Orton started running away from Foley, who still had the baseball bat. And yeah, these two were basically trying to maim each other like very early in the match with the bat and a trash can. So later on, these two dudes were still trying to kill each other with weapons. And then you saw Randy Orton being the first to bleed in this match. He got hit with Barbie, and he got seated to get leg dropped in the nuts with it by Foley. So, yeah. If I was watching this in 2004, if I was like in the Edmonton crowd, if I was Canadian, I was probably going to be like pointing to a fan next to me. It's like, yeah, he probably is not going to have kids. He probably won't be able to, you know what, to his future wife. But yet somehow, he was still able to have kids many years later, despite having that barbed wire bat dropped in his dick. Anyway, Foley tried to make his barbed wire bat play with fire, literally. But, of course, there's the fun police. There had to be some damn fun police around, and that fun police turned out to be Raw general manager Eric Bischoff. So Eric Bischoff came out, threatened to cancel the rest of the show, make everyone go home if Mick Foley went through with this fire hazard of an idea. So Mick Foley was just like, man, fuck you. And instead, he hit Orton with a baking pan. And he brought out a barbed wire board. And the barbed wire board backfired on him because the bloody Orton got back into the match, threw baking powder at Mick Foley, and power slammed him onto the board for a near fall. So Mick Foley's arm was bleeding. Randy Orton was fully covered in blood. But Orton was back in the match. So Orton tried to throw Foley through the barbed wire board in the corner, but it didn't break. So he decided to bring out a bag. And what does this bag contain of? Thumbtacks. You know, something that Mick Foley was very familiar with. So he poured out the bag of thumbtacks in the ring. Over 100 thumbtacks were now covered around the ring. And this was where his shining moment came in. Randy Orton tried to RKO Mick Foley onto the thumbtacks, but instead he gets dropped by Foley onto the thumbtacks. And you can see him screaming in pain. It's like, Mommy, but I just landed on some thumbtacks. They're all over my hands, my back, my face, my neck. So Randy Orton is literally on hundreds of thumbtacks, bleeding on the face. And the crowd is going crazy. And now the fight goes back outside. So it's literally a picture perfect. It's like picture perfect for as inhumane as I'm saying it right now. But Randy Orton, like, taking that thumbtack spot is like at a very young age. It's like wild. It's like ballsy. It's very ballsy of him. But anyway, like I said, the fight goes back outside, up the stage, and then briefly to backstage before Mick Foley sends Randy Orton's ass back out and then throws him off the stage with the thumbtack still in his back as the referee calls for medical. And then as they're trying to get Randy Orton, trying to tend to Randy Orton, and I believe they're trying to get the tacks off of him, Mick Foley's big ass dives onto Randy Orton, still being tended to medical, and then he covers him for a near fall. Like, this is by this point, it's getting insane. It is getting insane. Like, Randy Orton's trying to get tended by medical. He has several thumbtacks on him. He's selling, like, pretty good, in my opinion. And he's bleeding. He is fucking bleeding. like profusely. So, back in the ring, they get back in the ring. Foley hits his signature double arm DDT, but somehow Randy Orton is still alive. He is still alive in the ring. He kicks out, but then Orton, still having an inch of life in his body, he makes Foley bleed with Barbie. And despite Foley locking in the mandible claw twice, Orton hits the RKO twice, and the second and last one being on the barbed wire bat. And 1, 2, 3, still your Intercontinental Champion is one legend killer, Randy Orton. This match was like nonstop from the very start, and I don't have anywhere to say this. I think I've only watched this match once, not even in full. I've only watched the part where Randy Orton got thrown onto the thumbtacks, and yeah, it's just that visual of him like getting thrown into the thumbtacks, and then his reaction afterwards is like, "Mom, my back is full of tacks. Help me out." But man, when you add in the story of like how much lengths Mick Foley wanted to go to destroy Randy Orton after, well, his life nearly ended by like Randy Orton punting him down a flight of stairs. This was a very good way to cap it off. Like, not even a good way, a great way to cap it off. Like, Mick Foley wanted to kill his ass. Figuratively, of course. Figuratively. We're not talking about literal, even though they tried to portray it that way. But these two went to brutal lengths to assure the story capped off how it needed to be. And it makes for, honestly, a great hardcore match. I mean, obviously, hardcore matches are Foley's specialty, and he knows how to pace and work them. And, you know, the spots are obviously his specialty. But for Randy Orton, he was at such a young age. And this is kind of like his first his very first venture into like something this extreme. And man, he excelled. He really excelled. Like from, getting his comeuppance, suffering a lot of brutal spots from Mick Foley. And yeah, he sold a very good amount of them. He sold his ass off for Mick Foley. Obviously, the RKO into the thumbtacks, and then getting thrown off the stage with those thumbtacks still on his back and bleeding. And, just overall, find a way to still win this match. This is pretty good storytelling, I tell you. This is very good. This was Randy Orton's breakout performance for his storytelling work and just putting on a gutsy performance overall. And I know some people will say, oh, what about his certain other moment that happened 4 months later? Sure. I mean, some people can point to that. But I feel like this match right here, this was what really put Randy Orton on the map. And that really put WWE management on notice. So there's clear justification for why Mick Foley called this match his favorite of his career, because both of them worked really well together, and it elevated Orton to a new height as WWE was getting to strap the rocket on Cowboy Bob Orton's soon to be legend killer, if he wasn't already one. So all in all, this was a great hardcore match with all the right ingredients, and is remembered for the right reasons, as Randy Orton, the legend killer, his own legend was only going to grow from here on out. So the next match, we had the Hurricane and Rosie taking on Rob Conway and Sylvian Griner of La Resistance. If you needed a piss break from this match, from the last match, then this certainly was the match to do it. Because, well, this rematch from their first meeting 6 days prior on Raw, La Resistance went up to General Manager Eric Bischoff to demand a rematch because Bischoff's son, that I talked about earlier, Eugene, distracted them with a stuffed bunny. And I don't exactly know the connection between Eugene and Eric Bischoff, nor do I want to, because this match was not all that interesting, at all. So as the superhero team was making their comeback, the Eugene guy that I talked about earlier, he made his way to ringside again, and he started fiddling with the flags of La Resistance, and he even got into the ring. In plain sight of the referee and in front of Hurricane, and he was going to go for a suicide dive onto one of the guys from La Resistance. But then Rosie pulled down, I believe it was Rob Conway, before Hurricane got the win with the Pepsi Plunge, or whatever his finisher was called. It was some variation of CM Punk's old finisher. But anyway, Hurricane got the win over La Resistance, as William Regal had to get Eugene away from the ring in this pointless ass match. I mean, for all of you that watched WWE during this time period, or got a sense of who Eugene was, can you give me the appeal? Do you get the appeal of Eugene? For me, I mean, he did have a moment with Triple H, which I thought was funny, but other than that, outside of that, I don't know, man. It just didn't. I don't know. Maybe it's just me not understanding it more, but it's just I just didn't get it. I just really didn't get the character. I just really didn't get it, because maybe it's just such a controversial gimmick, and one that's kind of a sensitive topic to talk about. But why Eugene? But anyway, this match, yeah, it's just one of those that after such a good match before it, yeah, an opportunity to go to the bathroom. The next matchup before the main event, we had Edge take on Kane. Edge, who now goes by his real name, Adam Copeland, in AEW. 20 years prior, he returned from a career-threatening neck injury that kept him out of action for a year. He returned at the 2004 draft lottery a month prior, before this event, and he made an immediate impact by spearing his new boss, Raw General Manager Eric Bischoff. So weeks later, he got into a fight with Kane, and Edge used a hand cast which he acquired after breaking his hand in training, he used it as a weapon. So he got the upper hand over Kane, and a match was made between the two at Backlash. But Bischoff's assistant, Johnny Nitro, or as I more commonly know him as John Morrison, he added a stipulation on that match. Edge would lose that match if he used the hand cast on Kane in plain sight of the referee. So Edge would probably lose by disqualification, I assume, and he would also be suspended per the instructions of Johnny Nitro. That being said, on an interesting note, this was also one of those Edge matches back in 2004. Also in like from 2002 to 2004, like before late 2004, that his theme song, Rob Zombie's "Never Gonna Stop," yeah, never gonna stop. That song, it was dubbed out. It was dubbed in favor of his first theme song, "You Think You Know Me," the one that he first debuted back in 1999. It was due to licensing issues, like copyright issues that WWE just doesn't want to pay up the ass for. But yeah, it's just an interesting note to point out because I don't know, it's just one of those things that WWE just does is too cheap. It's just too cheap to keep those licensing issues in. So anyway, as for this match, Edge was basically fighting with one hand behind his back because, as you noticed early on, that Edge was just can't use the hand cast because otherwise he's going to get disqualified and suspended. So he's just basically fighting with one hand. So he is trying to fight Kane, but Kane overpowered him eventually, took advantage by attacking Edge's broken hand, such as slamming it onto the steel steps, stomping on his hand, and yeah, that was basically most of the match. But this relatively short match saw the referee slide out of the ring to avoid Edge hitting him with a spear, and Edge took advantage, reversing a choke slam to dick kick Kane, hit him with the hand cast, with the referee still outside, and he didn't see Edge do that, and he finished Kane off with a spear to win this match. And not really much to take away from this match, and if we're being honest, it didn't really affect both of them either way, because, well, Kane, his credibility not really not really affected. It's pretty much on a 50-50 level by that point because how much he won and lost. And for Edge, it was a little surprising in 2004. Like at that point, even when he returned from such a career-threatening injury, a little surprising how little the crowd cared for him during this time. So it's a little strange. It was really a little strange. Maybe because he didn't really have a defined gimmick, or he was just like one of those guys that was just happy to be there. But either way, it's just like a little surprising that the crowd that was in Canada, Edge is from, at least the eastern side of Canada, Toronto, Ontario, that the crowd didn't really care for him. But the good news was that things were only going to pick up for Edge from here on out for the soon-to-be rated R superstar. For now, though, this is an okay filler tune-up for Edge's first match. And yet this was his first match in over a year during that point because, like I said, the neck injury that kept him out beforehand. So now we get to our main event. And this main event was a WrestleMania 20 rematch for the World Heavyweight Championship, and it involved Chris Benoit, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels. And this was dubbed as the final encounter between these three gentlemen. So back at WrestleMania 20, in case you haven't heard, Chris Benoit beat both Triple H and Shawn Michaels to win the World Heavyweight title in the main event of that show. Benoit tapped out Triple H with the crossface to win the title. And a week later, in the 2004 draft lottery, Triple H was drafted over to SmackDown, while Raw General Manager Eric Bischoff announced that Michaels would receive a title match versus Chris Benoit and the following month's show, Backlash, which is this one. But a week after, Triple H was traded back to Raw in return for the Dudley Boys and Booker T because he didn't want to work Tuesdays. That was literally the legit reason why he went back to Raw. Because, Triple H didn't want to work on Tuesdays. But no, I don't exactly remember the storyline reason why Triple H was traded back to Raw, but I guess they probably explained why on TV. But anyway, the match was turned into a triple threat rematch from WrestleMania 20 to, grabbing some rings, pal. But yeah, here we are with this interesting triple threat that they're going to run back. And would it be as good as the first matchup back at WrestleMania? Let's talk about it. But little did the challengers know that they're going to be walking to some very hostile territory. The hostile territory of one Chris Benoit, who was going to be going into his hometown of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So, as expected, the crowd was red hot for their hometown hero, and either indifferent or very hateful towards the challengers, Triple H and Shawn Michaels, and especially Shawn Michaels. But more on that as we talk about this match. So, just like at WrestleMania, both Benoit and HBK started the match double teaming Triple H before going at each other. And then midway into this match, there was a ref bump. I believe there was another ref bump back at WrestleMania 20. But as expected, there was a ref bump as Michaels accidentally flew into the original referee and knocked him out. So Benoit locked in the sharpshooter on Triple H, but then also locked in the crossface on HBK, but there's no referee to oversee a potential submission victory for the Rabid Wolverine. So Benoit had to let go of the crossface because, well, who's gonna oversee my victory? So HBK took advantage of Benoit letting go of the submission and locked in his own sharpshooter. And of course, of all places, it just had to be in Canada. And of course, it wouldn't be a sharpshooter in Canada without Earl Hebner. The new referee, Earl Hebner, came out and he had to oversee things. Yeah, great reminder of the Montreal screw job. Even if they were like miles east of that, Edmonton had to be reminded of that. In Canada, HBK's screw job of Survivor Series 1997 is still well known countrywide in Canada. And the Edmonton crowd made him know of that. Like, it was only known in Montreal, Quebec? No, it made its way also to Edmonton. If maybe even got his way to Vancouver as well. If we're getting real here. So HBK was a very hated man. That's why I point back to, HBK was in very hostile territory because of the Montreal screw job. So from the rest of the match onward, there were chants of "you screwed Brett," and "you tapped out," courtesy of Triple H. But more importantly, "you screwed Brett" chants directed at HBK. And that got the crowd back into this match after, it started off a little slow. But those "you screwed Brett" chants really angered HBK. And he decided to, I'm going to take my anger out on Benoit and Triple H and jump on them through the announce table. But both of them dodged HBK. Michaels dove through the announce table, and that really wiped him out for like several minutes. So Benoit, Triple H went at it one-on-one in the ring. Benoit missed his flying headbutt, though, on the game, who returned it with a pedigree. But after he tried to go for a long-ass cover, HBK suddenly revived himself to break up the pin. So HBK's back in the match. He did his usual rally on Triple H, but instead of tuning up the band to hit Sweet Chin music, Michaels hit his finisher on Benoit on the apron, but he was low blowed by Triple H for his troubles. So Triple H then attempted the pedigree on Benoit on the steel steps outside, but then Benoit countered it with a slingshot to the ring post, which obviously led to Triple H bleeding. But then you get back in the ring. Benoit was about to get his lights knocked out with Sweet Chin music, but smart enough to counter with a sharpshooter onto HBK. And HBK was trying to get to the ring ropes, but nope. Benoit was one step ahead of him. Dragged him away from the ropes, locked back in the sharpshooter, and then here comes Triple H, slowly trying to get back in the ring, and then HBK is reaching towards him, and he's trying to reach out for help, and unfortunately for him, he suffers the same fate that his former friend did back at WrestleMania. Taps out. as Benoit retains the World Heavyweight Championship in front of his hometown crowd, in front of his family in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So this matchup wasn't as good as the Mania 3-Way. I felt like the Mania 3-Way had a lot more personal stakes in it. Felt a lot more intense. But, this one, it was still good for what it was. Because you notice how the hatred for both Triple H and Shawn Michaels, it was ever increasing. It started to become at a boiling point where it started costing them, the ultimate prize in Monday Night Raw. It's just the World Heavyweight Championship. And yeah, that's what they wanted for themselves. They would still go out of their way, to go after the champion, which was Benoit at the time. But, of course, fight for the title for themselves. But, unfortunately, they just got in their own way. And I like that little touch of HBK, the finish. Desperately trying to reach out to Triple H to save the match, but more important, just so he could save his chances of winning the title for himself. But he just couldn't survive the pain long enough to get Triple H to grab his hand to prevent a tap out. And that led to him tapping out. So... yeah, Benoit retains the championship. Triple H and HBK, they don't get the championship. So Benoit proved on that night that he was no one-hit wonder, like many were doubting back at WrestleMania 20. Unfortunately, though, he did not have the same strong booking that he did going forward because, his feuds with Kane, the rematch with Triple H. And then later on with Randy Orton, not the same exact kind of booking that he once had. And some of his weaknesses were kind of on display during those feuds as well. So, yeah, like I alluded to back in my WrestleMania 20 retro review, it was kind of like it kind of proved to him as a non-draw, but some of it not to his own fault though, not to his own fault. Benoit was a good wrestler, but he did have some issues, and of course, I'm not talking about the certain issues from 3 years later, but there were some flaws that he had on display in terms of character flaws, mic flaws, whatnot. Meanwhile, for Triple H and HBK, their on-screen hatred for one another was about to reach the most intense of levels, to the point where Eric Bischoff, he had to make a final decision on the two wrestlers once and for all. What that decision was going to be? Well, let's see. Nah, let's save that story for another day, because there's a vacuum. I don't know if you hear. There's probably a vacuum in the background, and I'd rather save that story when there's no noise in the background. So anyway, overall, 2004 Backlash, other than 3 matches, let's be honest, it's kind of a weak show. Even with the hot crowd in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, this show deep down lacked some serious star power outside of a couple names, with like Triple H, Benoit to a degree, HBK, and then you had the handicap match with Jericho, Trish Stratus, and Christian, and then that hardcore match. I think the hardcore match was the match of this show. It really showcased Randy Orton as a really good seller, and Mick Foley really helped out Randy Orton. They helped out each other on that night. So other than that, though, this show kind of lacked. Actually, not kind of. It really lacked in a lot of areas. But it was kind of the theme in 2004, because there were names that were either injured on both shows or had left the WWE by that point, where the current roster either was not ready to be built up to be namestays in the WWE, or they just can't be built up at that level, or WWE just chose to not build them up to that level. And here we are 20 years later. We're kind of in that same position where names are either injured, left the WWE, or can't be in the WWE for certain reasons. And then you have the current roster that's just not ready to be built up to be namestays, or WWE just chooses not to have them at that level because, well, I gotta get my certain favorites at that to stay there because reasons. But anyway, That is your 2004 Backlash review. If you watched this show well back 20 years ago, or maybe you're catching up on it, let me know your memories of this show from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, in the comments below on YouTube or on social media. Send me a message at Very Cold Lasagna on Instagram or Twitter. Either way, let's start a conversation about this old show in the discussion. But anyway, that is it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. Closing the Old Icebox once again with another retro review in the books. Episode number 197 of this icy yet spicy podcast has come to a close. But anyway, until the next one, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of sports. And until we see each other once again with this space that is Very Cold Lasagna, peace out.